Elatus, the fugitive. Far out among the stars, the masterminds of the spider people had placed their mightiest mysteries in the scientific device called the Diadem. And when that coronet was stolen, they were prepared to pursue it throughout eternity. The thief crashed among the nomads of Jadugar, a semi-barbarian world, and the diadem found its way into the hands and onto the skull of the girl Elatus. She was herself a strange one, daughter of a sky wanderer, outcast among the people who had raised her out of fear and awe. And the diadem was to prove both her bane and her treasure, for she could not remove it once it had sunk its electronic web into her brain and nervous system, and she did not know how to control the powers that were contained within it. Yet every moment she wore it, she would be a target for the vengeance of the spider race and the avarice of 1,000 worlds. So there have been strange airships overhead for the past several days. They were very high in the air at first, tiny specks in the evening sky, first noticeable primarily because of their contrails. Now the ships are lower, much lower. They move through the air at about the height of a helicopter. I've heard reports the ships actually crossed a vast distance, not from our own sky, but from their own sky, which we saw through something like a hole connecting their sky to ours. One of the 2 astronomers at Greenwood College, Dr. Kinzer, carefully observed their movements when they first appeared. He saw not 1 but 2 moons behind the ships, and very faint stars shaping unknown constellations. The ships are not aerodynamic. They do not seem to depend on thrust for lift to fly, like an airplane. They spew exhaust from their engines, but the engines seem to power some other kind of lift. Maybe anti-gravity? For the most part, they make no sound, or a subtle sound, like a tone in the air. Occasionally, though, for no apparent reason, the tone grows louder and it shifts uncomfortably. Some people say these tones have nothing to do with lift. They are more like searchlights, but they are mind probes, and the sounds are a residual effect of these beams. At first, we were completely at a loss as to why the ships were here, or why we've seen absolutely no response to the ships. We expected to see fighter jets come roaring to our rescue, like in a movie, but nothing like that has happened. We speculate that the visitors, if we should call them that, have somehow prevented their own discovery anywhere outside of Stone's Way. People are concerned, of course, but it's not like there's a panic. We have been living with the blurring for many months now. We are accustomed to unusual happenings at this point. Although these ships are certainly alarming, they haven't threatened us. Aside from the tonal shifts in the air, there have been no attacks. Nobody likes them, but that's about all I can say. Now, however, the conversation has changed. Starting last night, in the gloom of twilight, some people saw a woman, or what looked like a woman, walking down the middle of the street. This woman was not dressed appropriately for the wet and cold of early spring in the upper Midwest. She walked barefoot down the middle of the street, and she was accompanied by a massive animal, like a bear, or some say a great cat, looking like a black lioness in the gloom of oncoming night. This morning, we learned that the woman is real. She calls herself Diana. She says we can think of her as Diana, like the Greek goddess, the huntress. She's a hunter, and she has come here to hunt. We shift uncomfortably when we hear this. There are murmurs. There are hundreds of us in Grogan Square, standing in our coats, breathing clouds into the air because it's a chilly morning, while she looks as though she has just stepped out from a ball. She speaks to all of us effortlessly without moving her mouth. "There is someone new here, right?" She looks around. "Or don't you know?" She smiles, and it feels like there's a sharp prick in my brain, and there's a humming of tones in the air. "No, you don't know." She peers all around at us, and it appears to me that there's a new glint in her eye. "You all seem to know each other. You all seem to have been here all along, but one of you has not." She's silent for a moment. The great cat leaves her side and walks in among us. We are frozen. Literally, we can't move. The cat weaves through our crowd, passing each of us in turn. When it passes me, it rubs alongside my body, and I feel like I'm going to fall over, because I'm frozen like a statue, but I merely wobble. I don't fall down. The cat is very big. Its shoulder is nearly to my chest, and I'm a pretty big man. The huntress has closed her eyes as if she's concentrating. There are 3 ships directly overhead. There's a steady, low tone from the closest. The moment seems to go on forever, but then, suddenly, the moment has ended. I almost fall when my body is freed to move. She finally speaks, again without moving her mouth. "Well, you all really believe you are who you think you are. That's a good trick." She laughs at this, as if it's pleasing. She stands for a long minute, staring around at us. Her cat is at her side again. She looks directly at me. She's looking into my eyes. Her eyes narrow, and I feel my eyes start to burn. But then I wonder if I've imagined it, because she's looking around again. At Tilly Umbertson, Marvel Thompson, Peter Carpadop, Mrs. Denton, Little Montgomery, 10 feet in front of me, here with his grandmother, Officer Chan, Professors Rosa and Kinzer, and many others. She sighs audibly in our minds. And then, suddenly, she's gone. Like maybe she was a projection from the ships, or she and her black lioness have been teleported back to the ships. And then, without any sort of fanfare, the ships are rising in the air, slowly at first, then faster and faster until they are distant specks, and the sky above them is not the sky I know. I hear one last phrase in my head. "I'll be watching and waiting. You'll have to make a move at some point." And then the inside of my head is silent. I look around. The crowd is breaking up. I wonder if all of the other people heard the same thing I heard, but I'm afraid to ask. I go home. So I have just been getting ready for bed. I stood for a long time staring at myself in the mirror. Have you ever stared so long at yourself in the mirror that you become unfamiliar to yourself? I remember as a little kid staring at myself so long, unblinking, that it seemed to me the face staring back at me was a stranger to me, and sometimes I'd become terrified. Or at least, I think I remember doing that as a child. I'm not sure who did that anymore.